Welcome back to Hotel Talk, and today I have a very, very special friend of mine here, so we'll be chatting away about all our happy memories in this industry. It is none other than Nick Aristou, who is the Executive Director of Four Seasons Hotel Limassol, which is part of Mosquito Hotels. Nick, thanks for coming.
Morning, Farah. It's a great pleasure to be with you here today. It's something that we've discussed for a while, obviously, and I've been looking forward to this time for a while now.
Yeah, well, we've been saying for ages, we've got to record the podcast, we've got to record the episode, but it's just been crazy days with everything that's happening in the world, and then, we've had like a few trips, and then and of course, Four Seasons at the moment is closed for renovation, so that's keeping you really busy. You were saying that it's all like a dust heaven right now with the rooms being joined together, and
it's become a much bigger project than we originally planned. Having got into the deconstruction phase to start renovating the new sea view rooms, we're going to take two rooms on the fourth and fifth floor sea view and knock them into one.
Amazing. So they're going to be huge.
They're
like 60 square meters.
60 square meters,
wow.
Yeah, they're going to be a very nice new luxury sea view product.
Well, it's fairly rooms. It's like a junior suite.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We haven't come up with a name for them yet, but we will announce it.
Everyone, if you're listening, shoot it Nick's way, your ideas.
On the inner-view side, we're closing all the balconies to make the rooms larger. No one ever sits on the inner-view balcony. It's a complete waste of space. So
that's what you did with Amethyst. So
yes, exactly.
You've had that experience to see.
It worked well.
To be honest, in our hotel, we've never had on the inland view. So they've always been bigger rooms with no balcony. So that's how busy Nick is. The phone is always ringing.
Forgot to put it on silent.
No problem. Don't worry. So Nick, let's go back to the beginning. Everybody can tell that you have a British accent, even though you're pretty Cypriot and you grew up here, but you spent a lot of time in the UK. So let's talk about, where you were born, where you grew up, a bit about your life, and then how you ended up working in hotels and why.
Well, if we go all the way back, my parents left Cyprus in the late 50s, and I was born and raised in London in the UK. So I had a typical sort of second generation upbringing, upbringing in London, went to Greek school every Saturday.
Like my big fat Greek wedding.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's why one of the reasons I ended up in hotels was because I got used to working 6 days a week at school. Then obviously, as I grew up, hotels and the catering industry was one thing that started to gather my interest. My parents were not in this business, they were in the rag trade, as most Greek Cypriots were in the 60s and 70s.
And especially the ones that went to London. Yeah.
In London, exactly. But to a degree, my father actually prompted me not to follow in his footsteps in the rag trade because he could see that the rag trade was
on a
decline by the end of the 70s. It was moving out to Romania and then finally eventually off to China. So it wasn't a future-proof industry as far as the UK was concerned.
That's quite wise of him,
yeah. So I went to study hotel management at London University. Did a 4-year course with 2 industrial placement periods during that time. And then when I finished my studies, I joined what was then Trust House Forte as a graduate management trainee and ended up staying with them for 11 years.
Wow, I didn't realise it was 11 years. And you were based in London, weren't you, the whole time?
Not all the time, no. So I went all around the UK. I worked in Cambridge and Coventry. My favourite hotel that I worked at the time was the Balmoral in Edinburgh. I was GM there for 2 years in 1991.
But you didn't meet the Queen?
Not there.
No. Let's tell everyone that quick story.
Yeah. Well, during my time with Forte in London and Balmoral in Edinburgh, I had actually met all the members of the royal family, including Princess Diana, but not Camilla, except for the Queen. I hadn't met the Queen during all that time. And then in 1993, I left Forte, I left the UK and came to Cyprus. I was recruited by what was then the Hawaii Beach Hotel, which is now the Grand Resort.
And the owner and director has been on this podcast as well.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, chatting, yeah.
And I joined them in September 1993. And the current owner's father was my employer at the time, who's since passed away, as you know, Mr. Guillermo's. And the first day I went there, he sat me down and said, "Welcome, Nick, this is how things are going here, this is what's going to happen here and there, and blah, blah, blah." And in 3 days' time, we have the Commonwealth Conference. It's the first time it's ever come to Cyprus. And I thought, oh yes, that's very interesting.
Talk about landing with a bang. Yeah.
So in 3 days, I had to organise everything to do with an event of that magnitude, with 47 heads of state attending, and our hotel was the actual conference venue. So the first thing I said back to him was, "Do we have a red carpet?" And he said, "No, why do we need a red carpet?" I said, "Well, the Queen's coming, and she's the head of the Commonwealth." And he goes, "Yeah, well, we're going to have to get a red carpet." So that was literally my first duty at the hotel, was sourcing a red carpet for over 100 metres long for the Queen when she was going to inaugurate the conference.
And then you met her.
And then obviously I met her
in Cyprus
on the first day of the Commonwealth Conference in Cyprus, and that created the full house of royal family members that I had met.
Oh, so nice. So, okay, so going back then, so you worked for Forte for 11 years.
Yeah.
And then moved.
In 93, as I said, I moved to Cyprus. Jumping forward to today, just briefly, I was calculating the other day that this year I will have spent half of my life in the UK and half of my life in Cyprus.
Ah, literally 50-50.
So I'm at 50-50 in 23.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
And then, well, and not including all the days that we've travelled in this industry. I mean, you've travelled to so many countries.
So many places.
Spent so many days outside of Cyprus, promoting Cyprus.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then you were, Hawaii for some years.
So I was at the Hawaii again for 11 years. 11 seems to be my lucky number. 11 years at Hawaii were a very, very challenging and fulfilling time. We were very, very focused on developing competence and incentive business in Cyprus, and to that particular hotel at the time, because at the time it had the biggest conference room on the island. Plus,
I think it still is one of the biggest.
It's still one of the biggest now. Yeah, there are other bigger ones, and of course there's the biggest one we opened in Staples.
Yeah.
But we did that very successfully, and the Hawaii Beach Hotel at the time was awarded best conference hotel in Europe 2 years running in 97 and 98. So it became a very successful conference hotel. And that was a sort of springboard to my career in Cyprus as well. So it was with them for 11 years. Then in 2004, there was a big domino effect with the managers of various hotels in Limassol.
So what happens? One leaves, and then the place needs to be taken, and someone else leaves, and
Exactly.
Every few years we have it here.
And so at that time, in 2004, the manager at what was then the Meridian left, and the manager, who's now passed away, but that's Sol Costa-Seriolis, who was at the Four Seasons, left the Four Seasons. I went to the Meridian, and then I left the Hawaii and went to the Four Seasons. And that was the sort of start of my career there, which has now been 18 years.
Wow.
So basically, this year I complete 40 years in the industry. 11 with Forte, 11 with the White Beach, and 18.
Maybe 22. Yeah.
Maybe 22 for double 11. Yeah.
Exactly. And what's the best part about the industry? I mean, I know that you love this industry and you wouldn't be in any other. What's been the best part, and what is the best part for you?
without a doubt, I mean, it may sound cliche and everybody says it, but without a doubt, the best part of working in this industry is the people that you deal with and meet in it. And I don't just mean the customers, I mean the staff as well, and the partners. So there's customers, staff, and partners. Those are the three categories of people in the industry.
Yeah, partners meaning colleagues and associates.
Associates, business partners. Yeah. And it's a tough industry. We all work long hours, we know that. And it's something that you have to accept if you're going to get into it and do it right. And you have to like the industry in order to be prepared to do those hours and to enjoy it. But you have to love the industry to do it well. There's a difference. Yeah,
that's a really good point. And I know we've often discussed on our trips if we became like this because of the industry, or if we were attracted to the industry because of how we are. It has come up quite a few times as well on this podcast. And
I think you have to be a certain type of person.
I think so, yeah. You definitely have to be a people person.
You have to be a people person. You have to have the character and the willingness and the strength of will.
Yeah, and the stamina.
And the stamina to do what you do for such a long time as well. So those type of people gravitate towards the industry. And the industry welcomes them and accepts them in as well.
Yeah.
It works both ways.
And on this podcast, we spoke quite a bit to various people about burnouts. We've had 2 people on the podcast so far, Nicholas and Sagis, who have been very open and very honest about going through burnouts and, just not just putting too much in and not giving enough to themselves. So what would you say, how have you avoided that?
Well, I think I have avoided it. Well,
now the truth comes out. I'm in the middle of a crisis now. No.
I'll rephrase that.
Yeah.
I've avoided burnout, I believe, because as I said
you're
before,
still here. I mean, you're still in the industry.
Here, 40 years down the line, but not without sacrifices.
Yeah. And
my first marriage probably was a favourite piece of the industry, that's no doubt about that. But then, of course, you learn from your mistakes, so I'm making damn sure that my second marriage won't go the same way.
To your beautiful wife, who I think is very understanding as well of the hours and
yes, of course.
And what and I think that's also key, is that any partnerships that anybody has in any job they're in, but talking about this industry, the partner has to understand that that's what we have to do, that sometimes we will miss events, we will miss birthdays, we will miss dinner time or whatever it might be, and that's just part of who we are and what we do.
Exactly. And dear my wife now of 5 years.
I can't believe it's 5 years already. Wow.
Yeah. She worked in the industry herself, so she understands. Yeah. She knows what it takes. She knows what needs to be done. And therefore it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Would you have done anything differently in the past?
Not really.
Well, that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, really. So, let's talk about some fun times. And oh my goodness, we have so many fun times. So, I mean, we were talking now, we've travelled all over the place. I mean, before I had kids as well, I was traveling. You and I we both got a sales and marketing background.
Exactly,
so
yes.
That's where that was our forte, and it still is, but we were doing a lot for our own hotels and different times completely, and for Cyprus as a whole. And, I mean, it was the days where there was exhibitions for public. I mean, it sounds crazy now with the internet and everything, that we were on a little stall and with a brochure and saying to old ladies, do you want to come to Cyprus? This is how you book, like really individual people. What have been some of the funniest times and memories and, or just funny stories with guests?
Oh my God, there's so many to recount. It's just the exhibitions and the sales trips. Many people used to think that we were going off on a jolly. And nobody actually realised, unless you do it, how tough it actually is, because you're going non-stop.
How much it takes out of you.
Yeah, you're starting in the morning, you're exhibiting, you're attending cocktails, events, dinners, and you're going full speed until 1, 2 in the morning, and then starting again at 7, 8 the next morning.
And then travelling in between on the plane.
Travelling in between on the planes.
And taking night flights.
Taking night flights in order to be in the right place the next morning.
Yeah,
and so on
or
and so
be
on.
in the office because you need that Friday before you travel again the next week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at one stage when we were doing, in the height of exhibitions, we were doing 30 to 40 exhibitions a year. And I had reached the point where I had 2 separate suitcases packed and ready. The go bag, as you say.
Yeah.
So I'd come back from one exhibition, drop a suitcase off
with the dirties
and pick up a full case with a clean one and off.
Oh, you're reminding me now. I remember us, I can't remember where we were, and just laughing, saying like, everybody must think we only own these clothes. Because it was like the ready, the go-to. I don't know, you had like your 2 suits with your 3 shirts. I had like, I don't know, a couple of suits that were like, they were just the ones that they went with everything. The shoes went, the handbag was ready for me there. And it was just easy to travel. So every week we packed the same thing.
Exactly.
And it was so funny.
It was amazing. I remember once we were at an exhibition, I think it was Dublin, and we had a very, very smart photo of myself, Marios, and Mark at the exhibition in our suits. Gentlemen professionals standing there to attention, alert, nice photo. And then that same evening,
I remember.
We were at a travel agent event, dinner followed by party and dinner.
It was a black tie, wasn't it?
Yeah, where we were looking a little bit worse for wear by the end of the night.
Yeah.
And by sheer chance, someone took a photo of the 3 of us again.
In the same order as well.
In the same order. Looking completely different to how we did in the morning. And that became the before and after shot.
I remember, we've got to find those pictures. It's so, so funny.
I'll see if I can find it and send it to you.
So funny. Yeah, and I remember, because you guys had bow ties on, and then the bow ties were off, and, you know, everyone was exhausted, and yeah, it is really tiring. And I remember, I mean, so many people would tell me, wow, you get to see all these countries. And we didn't see anything. I mean, we would just see an airport, a hotel room, and an exhibition centre, you know. I mean, and then we'd come back and we hadn't slept. And I remember one week, I think I'd slept in a bed in a 7-day period. I went to 4 countries and I slept in a hotel room or a bed only 3 of the nights. Because the other nights I was travelling overnight, attending things in the day. And I remember coming home and just being like, absolutely. I think I was beyond tired. I was just like shocked.
Yeah. Do you remember the early days of exhibitions when North Cyprus was just starting to appear on the travel scene and was taking part in the exhibitions? And the first day of the exhibition was spent
where are they? And if they were close to us.
Make sure they're not close to us. Let's take their flags down. And one year they actually came and took our Cyprus flag down overnight, if you remember.
Yes, was that in Bournemouth as well?
That was in Bournemouth, right.
And I remember Magda from CTO, do you remember she used to have massive fights with them? Yeah. And then all the exhibition halls, all the organisers knew in the end, and they had to put us on like opposite sides of the arena. And I remember especially the older clientele would come and they would ask, and they'd say, oh, is this Cyprus? Is this all Cyprus or South Cyprus? And we would say, this is Cyprus. You know, you're talking about the occupied area. And yeah, it was like a huge thing. Yeah, people were still, and they still are, I mean, rightly say, very sensitive about.
They still are, but now they know. They keep us well apart.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Let's talk about some fun stories with guests. I actually remembered one of your stories this morning before this podcast, but I don't know. Actually, I don't even know if we'd want to talk about that on the podcast with, I've got like Nick on the camera going, let's not do it. He knows the one. Okay, come on, Nick. Tell us other ones, PG versions of. And then if you guys see Nick at a party, just had a drink, ask him about the crazy stories.
The most interesting and fun period, which created a lot of funny stories was when the Russian market first started to travel. As we all know, Russia was under communist rule for 70 years, and in the early 90s, when they became free of it, let's say, it was a really quick learning curve. They started to travel, they started to find out what nice clothes and good food was all about, and so on and so on. And they started to discover Cyprus and our hotels. But the early days, the breakfast at the hotel and lunch, and it was as if they hadn't ever seen a buffet in their life.
I remember they put dessert and main and soup.
Starters, main and desserts all together on one plate.
Or several plates around them and start eating them in different orders.
Around them on the table and start eating in different orders. Exactly.
And all of our teams, they didn't know, could they take the plates, could they not? They'd go and try and take the starter and they said, I haven't finished, even though they were having desserts. And it was mayhem.
And the nouveau riche element of the Russian market was quite funny as well. I remember once at the Four Seasons we had this customer who came in the bar one night with his girlfriend or wife, I'm not sure what she was, but obviously was wanting to impress her. And sat down in the bar, the waiter came over to him and he said, bring me your best cognac. So the woman bought him a bottle of cognac, which was something like 4,000 euros a bottle. Could have been pounds then, I can't remember if it was pre or post euro.
Maybe pounds.
But it's the principle that we're going to work on. So he brought it over for him, and the barman was doing all the show, and he was warming the brandy glasses up and pouring a little bit here and a little bit there, and he served it to them with all the panache and the style that he could muster, and served it and went back to the bar. A couple of minutes later, he looked across to the bar and saw the customer, who obviously had left the bottle, he wanted the whole bottle, he left the bottle on the table with him, and he saw the customer holding the bottle and pouring it onto the floor. And the barman, through wobbly, he rushed over and said, Sir, what are you doing? This is expensive brandy. And the Russian guest's reply was, she doesn't like this. Bring me another one.
Of the same? Or something else.
Or something else. So the wily barman went back to the bar, took the bottle back with him, opened a bottle of Five Kings, which is the cheapest brandy in Cyprus, local brandy you could possibly think of, and took it over to him, charged him 100 euros for it, and he loved it.
Well, that says a lot about our Cyprus brandy, but no, I think the moral of the story, I mean, it's fun, and again, we're laughing now, we're saying Russians, but it's any culture. I mean, we have stories from everyone, and especially, new money from anyone in the world. There's so many stories. Oh my goodness, it's hilarious. I can think of, so many. So, you've run some of the best hotels, not just in Cyprus, but I think in the world. I mean, you've had experiences, so many in London.
Yeah, if we go back to my 40 days, I was, my last job with them was, as I said, general manager of Balmoral, but I was manager also of the Waldorf, the Cavendish, the Westbury, all in London.
Which hotel was it that they stole the carpets?
That was the Waldorf.
I mean, come on, say the story. It's just such a hilarious story.
That was the Waldorf.
I mean, it's just how professional people can be.
Exactly, yeah. And the ideas that criminals will come up with to get their evil ways. But basically, the Waldorf was an Edwardian building, very traditional, and decorated in that sort of style. And in the lobby, as you walked in, there was a huge Persian carpet, must have been easily maybe 6 by 15 meters across.
It was stunning.
Yeah, it was lovely and priceless, literally priceless, very expensive. And I came into work one morning, came in through the main entrance, walked across the lobby, and my feet were clicking on the floor, and I looked down and I thought,
something's missing.
Strange, where's the carpet gone? So I approached the reception team. This was about 7 in the morning, just before the night staff were leaving their shift. So I approached them. I said, "Guys, what's happened to the carpet?" And he said, "Oh well, the cleaners came during the night to take it and have it cleaned and returned." I said to them, "I didn't organise any cleaners. What did these guys actually do?" "Well, they just came in with overalls and they said we're the cleaning company for the carpet, and they rolled it up and put it. 4 guys put it on their shoulders and walked out with it. And you let them without question."
Well, they had papers, didn't they? I think on the
They had papers
yeah.
of the cleaning company and so on and so on. So they did a very, very effective fraud on the staff at the time, and we never saw that carpet again.
Crazy. But I think the most ostentatious and audacious acts are the ones that are, I mean, we had the same, way back when computers and the internet was first starting, and we had, very modern and expensive computers in the lobby as kind of, for the guests to use. And one day, one of them, they were missing. And we're like, how did a computer disappear? I mean, you can't walk out, and they were huge. I mean, it wasn't small computers back then. And someone as well that looked as if they were repairing, and they just they walked in, chest puffed out, picked up the computer with everything. I don't even think one person could do it at the time, and left. Nobody questioned them. They were like, oh, they had such, I don't know, like power about them, that, so.
Yeah, they're amazing. The criminals that have the nerve and the gall to do things like that in hotels are amazing. When you're renovating, it's actually a very susceptible time. We had it, actually another case.
Because there's so many people in and out.
On our previous renovation 5, 6 years ago, where the guy came to the hotel in overalls, walked into one of the rooms that was being stripped, took the TV off the wall. The maid who was stripping the room said to him, "Where are you going with that?" And he said, "I'm taking it down to get it repaired." But she was clever enough to report security immediately, and we caught that as he was trying to leave the front door with the TV under his arm.
We had the same actually with the TV, and by chance one of our animators found them, and then yes, where are you going? And there was mum board, and literally put it down and pegged it out. And again, it was when we were renovating, I think. Okay, so in all these amazing hotels that you've worked, what makes a good hotel?
The people, without a doubt. Obviously, the infrastructure has to be there, and everything.
Yeah, and the decor and
the design, the facilities, they all have to be there. But it's the people that make the difference. The hotel on its own is a building. Your hotel is closed at the moment, my hotel is closed at the moment, and you walk in and you feel sorry for it. Because there's no people, and there's no life, and there's no soul. But when it's up and running, the people give it the soul. And that's always the first impression that the guests get when they come in, is the feeling they get, the vibe they get from the people that are in the hotel. And that's what makes the difference. More often than not, guests will know whether they're going to be happy in a hotel within the first 2 or 3 minutes of walking through the door. And again, that's purely down to how the people handle them and treat them when they arrive.
Very wise words. I couldn't agree more. And I think in both our hotels, we are really proud of our people.
Absolutely.
And I think, for the most part, and they're not here to say for themselves, but I think they're happy working with us. We've got people in both our teams that have been with us for so many years. And
since the beginning.
And I think that speaks for itself.
The Four Seasons is 30 years old this year, and the Amethyst is 50 years old this year. The Four Seasons has 27 people still working that have been there for 30 years in the beginning. And the Amethyst has one guy who has been working there for 49 years.
Wow, imagine.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've got similar as well.
Yeah, we have. I think we're at, a couple have retired recently, but I think we're still at about, I want to say just under 15 people have been here since we opened, so 35 years, it'll be 36 this year.
Yeah.
And then I think we've got over 50% of our staff have been with us for over 10 years. And then, and a huge amount for over 15 years. So, it's amazing.
One of my mottos, and I think I might have had it as a personal motto before Richard Branson ever coined it. But it's basically look after your people and they'll look after your guests.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that was one of the things I was going to ask you, one of your favourite quotes.
Yeah.
So many years in this industry, obviously we've seen it change dramatically. But what are the biggest changes that you've seen, and what do you predict for the future?
That's a very good question. Our industry has changed hugely over the last 40 years. I'm one of the generation who has seen the industry transform from a totally manual environment.
Literally paper and pen.
And
a fax machine.
And a fax machine. Telex machine with a ticker tape, which most people under 30 wouldn't even know what it is these days. And also what we used to call a Whitney board. If you remember a Whitney board?
No, I don't think that's
A Whitney board was the board in the back of reception, which was basically a huge board, depending on the number of rooms you had. You'd have that number of slots in the board.
Oh yes, okay, of course, yeah. I just didn't know that's what it was called.
It was called a Whitney board.
A Whitney board.
And you remember, you'd have a green card in the slot if the room was
occupied,
clean and ready. A red card if it was occupied.
Yeah.
A yellow card if it was the departure that day. A blue card if it was
an arrival. And the keys hanging there.
And so on and so on.
And any mail that came because people were getting their post delivered to the hotel.
Exactly. And literally one person on each shift had the responsibility of keeping that board updated every minute of the day.
Yeah, and for big hotels, that was
a monster task.
Yeah.
Monster task. And now that is all in one computer. So computerization of the industry, which was one of the latest industries, believe it or not, to be computerized, happened in the late 80s to early 90s. A lot of hotels still to the late 90s hadn't.
Yeah, I'd say. I mean, I don't think all of the hotels were that. Yeah, because it was expensive. And not all the hotels could afford it. Not just literally the investment, but they couldn't afford the people to do it as well. Yeah. So, I think a lot of hotels, it wasn't until, even when I started working, which was early 2000, I think I was the first one with an email address. Like, we were still faxing. Like, it wasn't really, everybody had a computer, and all our reservations were going in, but the majority of reservations were coming in by fax. Even if we got emails, we'd print them and fax it back, or they'd fax it to us, and if we'd sent the confirmation over email, people were saying, well, where is it? And they were like, that doesn't count, you want to fax it, and sign it. Yeah.
So, exactly, and now we're almost at the stage where we're paper-free in our reservations and administration environments of hotels. So, from the administration back of house point of view, that's been the greatest change that's facilitated it. And obviously, the advent of online booking as well has created a huge leap forward in hotel management.
And shift in dynamics between just being relying on tour operators, and then having more FOTs. Yeah.
Although, let's make it clear to the listeners that we cannot rely on purely online business, especially in an environment where we are as a resort location, a resort destination on an island.
People can't drive to.
We will always need tour operating business. And if you can achieve a mix of 50-50, 50 tour operating and 50 online, is the perfect scenario for hotels in destinations such as ours. And that will always be the case because of the connectivity issue. We always need planes, we always need tour operators, we'll always need airlifts to get people here. so on and so on. Unlike a hotel in a major European city destination,
where people can drive to, where there's business
where
travel.
they can basically rely 99-95% on online business these days.
Yeah. Although, again, that's changing. I mean, even 50% will be amazing, and maybe one day it might be more, because hopefully connectivity to Cyprus will increase. Hopefully there'll be more business travellers, more individuals, people doing dynamic travel, and packages. We were talking about that with the Deputy Minister of Tourism actually on this podcast. So, because that will also help us with seasonality. You know, if there's more flights here, then hopefully, we'll be better off in winter. And for the future, what do you predict?
Now, from the guest experience point of view for the future, we're already at the stage now where we have to address the question of guest experience, because people these days are past the point of just going to a hotel for a break and a relax and this and that. They want to have an experience, and that's what we have to give them these days. This has already been on the cards now for the last 2 or 3 years, but with the future, especially for the millennials, they're all looking for experiential holidays, and that's really what we all have to look at for the business model for the future. Is how to give people varied and different and great experiences
and authentic,
and attract them here, which is the one thing that our Deputy Minister has been focusing on himself for a few
absolutely
years, and has created all these different guest experience models.
Which have been really good. Some of them are amazing. So, going back to your London experience and your Cyprus experience, what's the biggest difference between London hotels and Cyprus hotels? Obviously, you've said that we rely on a different model here and with the tour operators, but what's the big difference?
It's the difference in the business, which is generated by the destination itself, as I just mentioned earlier. A large city like London has a completely different clientele and completely different motivation than a leisure resort destination like Limassol.
Pace and client needs.
Pace is different, the client needs are different. Everything is different in that respect. And the biggest difference, though, which makes a big impact on the actual client and the enjoyment of the role of the job, is that within the leisure destination environment that we have here, you create much better, much stronger, much longer lasting relationships with your clients. Because they come 2 or 3 times a year, they spend a couple of weeks in the hotel each time. You get to know them, you get to know their families.
In London, even with business clients, I guess you wouldn't have that either, because they're more of a rush.
In London, they're more of a rush. They're only there for 2 or 3 days. It's a bigger hotel, a bigger environment. You don't get to meet them. At the Four Seasons, we have 55% of our business is repeat guests,
which is amazing.
And I could probably tell you that I know 90% of them all by name. That could never be achieved in a hotel in London, not even by the best guest relations manager that they have in one of the top 5-star hotels there, for example.
I guess also people come here and they have more time, or they want to have more time. You know, in London, you just get into that mode of like, right, I've got to do my work, I've got to get out, I've got to get to these shops, I've got to da. And, you know, you don't really have time for that chit-chat.
Exactly.
You're like, hi, how are you? Yeah, that's my room, great, see you later.
See you later.
Yeah. You're polite, you'll have, share a few words, but you don't want to have, whereas here you're just coming and like, even if you're here for work, you're like, tell me your story.
Still relaxing, and you're in the hotel longer during the day and in it for more days.
Right, bonus question.
Bonus question.
One from this.
Okay, let's see what
Crystal ball.
There we go.
Right, shall I read it out to you?
Yeah.
Let's see who. Oh, they haven't said who's asked this. So one of our team members has said, What would you like to have in your life that you don't? Wow.
What would I like to have
what
in
a
my life
question.
that I don't?
You don't have already.
That's a
Yes.
very good question. I'm very fulfilled in my personal life, I must admit.
Oh, that's so nice.
I have a lovely wife, I have a son, I have a stepson, all wonderful people. My parents are still alive.
And lovely people.
So, really, personally, nothing more I would want. Professionally, again, I've achieved everything I set out to achieve. So really, I suppose the only thing that is left is more money.
Which buys you more choices,
Exactly.
more freedom.
Exactly.
That's the thing about money.
And more time.
Yes.
More time. Probably more important.
Yeah. Well, I agree. That's the nice thing. I think people misunderstand sometimes when people say, oh, I need more money, I want to earn more. It's not about, and you are definitely, one of the least superficial people that I know, and I love you for that. So yeah, it's not about buying this stuff. It's about having the options to have those experiences, to share it with your family, to travel, to, do different things. And I wish your son all the best. He's lovely. We both have Leons as sons.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so the best name for our little boys. Yours is not so little.
Yeah, mine's a big boy now. But, he's enjoying his life in the UK. He's done what I did the opposite way around.
Yeah, other way around.
He was born here and ended up going back there.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for spending more time with me and on this podcast.
It's been a great pleasure. We finally managed to get it done.
Yes, exactly. So, everyone, I'm sure you've enjoyed this, and thank you very much for listening.
Pleasure. Bye-bye to everyone.